That's right, most definitely. When you hear that, it's time for Ultimate Health on Joy 99.7 FM. With me, Naughty by Nature. Yeah, we've had loads of rain. ECG's gone cuckoo. Enough to challenge your mental wellness, huh? Let me take some praise from Koda. And we'll talk about prioritizing the mental health and wellness of older persons. Stick and stay. Joy 99.7 FM. The program is Ultimate Health, your ultimate guide to healthy living. This and every Sunday, 2:05, with me, Naughty by Nature. That's right, every Sunday, we do it for the cause and not the applause. Today, we are tiptoeing into mental health. Yeah, next week is Mental Health Week. 10th of October every year is World Mental Health Day. And I've got my family members in the studio. That's right, from the Department of Psychiatry of the University of Ghana Medical School and, of course, Kolebu Teaching Hospital. We're taking a look at prioritizing the mental health and wellness of the elderly or of older persons. Why is this an issue? Why are we looking at that? And who is in that category? What are their specific circumstances? I've got with me in the studio Dr. Josephine Styles Daku, a senior medical officer with the Department of Psychiatry in the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. Josephine, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Right, we're expecting Francis Yeboah. He's a community mental health practitioner, also with us in the Department of Psychiatry in Kolebu. Great to have you in the studio, not in the department.
Great to be here.
You're welcome. Now, coming up is our, Mental Health Week, right? Starting from the 8th, we've got a series of activities, but our theme is, the global prioritization of mental health and wellness. Can you just explain that for our listeners? We want to prioritize this. What does it really mean? Is it that we're not paying attention to mental health and wellness?
Well, this year's theme, as you said, is making mental health and well-being a priority for all globally.
Right.
And I think that it's about time that we pay more attention to our mental health. There has been a flare-up in mental health advocacy over the years in recent times, but there is still a lot lacking.
Right.
We usually ignore that aspect of our health and concentrate more on the physical aspect. So it's about time that we lift it up and then shine more light on it for ourselves and then for the world in general.
Right. The African tends to somatize, tends to focus on that which affects the body.
Yeah.
Physical ailments, physical challenges. When it comes to mental challenges, we tend to close our eyes and we're a bit uncomfortable with talking about these things.
Yes.
But we are prioritizing the mental health and wellness of older persons. Now, when we hear mental health, typically people want to hear depression, schizophrenia, but let's talk about mental health before we talk about mental illness and the challenges.
Okay.
So when we say mental health, what do we mean? People seem to understand when we say physical health, but what is good mental health?
Okay. So mental health is actually a state of well-being,
right,
where an individual is able to generally cope with life's stresses, is able to achieve all that they can, and is able to make some meaningful contribution to their community in general.
Right. So a state of well-being, which guarantees, which actually is the foundation of your societal community inclusion.
Yes.
Right. You are able to meet the demands and challenges of life.
Yes.
So life will challenge you.
Definitely.
But if you're in a good state of mental health and well-being, you should be able to meet these challenges.
Yes.
Right. So a person in that state is considered to have good mental health.
Yes.
And
exactly.
wellness.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So we can move forward from there and start maybe considering the kind of things that indicate that a person is okay, just to be a bit more practical on the ground. So, for example, if I was in my teens, I should be in school.
Yes.
Right? I should be doing relatively or averagely okay. I should be able to meet the demands of school. I should be able to contribute at home, part of my family, and so on and so forth. Right?
Yes.
If I'm a bit older, I should be maybe in university or out of university, working and in employment.
Exactly.
All right? So these are key indicators and markers that we can look out for to say that a person is enjoying good mental health.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the kind of risk factors that would compromise a person's mental health or wellness?
Okay. So there are a lot of things around us that can put us at risk. I mean, just by virtue of the fact that we are human and we live in an environment that we largely cannot control most of the time.
Right.
We are at risk of mental illness. Things happening around us, the stresses around us. Earlier, I heard you mention the rain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's throwing people out of their
environmental
accommodation.
Stresses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they have all these stresses from work, relationships with the family, friends, and all that. Even the economic status.
Thank you.
Yes, that is also a very big stressor
Right.
that can increase the chances of somebody developing mental illness or being mentally unwell.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Among others.
Okay. If you've just joined us, 17 minutes past the hour of 2 on Joy 99.7 FM, we're taking a look at the mental health and wellness of older persons. You just heard speaking Dr. Josephine Styles Daku. She's a senior medical officer with the Department of Psychiatry. We've just been joined by Francis Yeboah. He's a community mental health practitioner, also with the Department of Psychiatry. We're trying to focus on older persons. Francis, you're welcome.
Thank you, Uncle Note.
Oh, am I your uncle now? Good to have you. But let's look at the focus for today. Older persons, right? Let's define that. When we say older persons, I mean, we Africans, we like respect and who is older and all that. But when we target older persons, is there a threshold? Is there a cutoff?
Yes. When we are looking at the elderly, usually we are talking about people that are 60 years and above.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So that falls into the category of elderly.
Elderly.
Or old age, yes.
Right, okay. And therefore, we can go to the extremes where we have the aged.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So elderly. So as soon as you retire, you're actually among the country's elderly.
Exactly.
Okay, right. It may have legal and other connotations, but the definition is clear. Persons above 60.
Yes.
Now, my reading tells me that this percentage or this category of our population is growing at an interesting, or maybe I may even suggest a significantly alarming rate.
Yes.
We're expecting to have more and more older persons, or more and more persons above 60. Francis, why is this the case?
Should I call it that we are blessed?
We are blessed. We're living longer.
Yes. You know, each and every one wants to grow older. And after 60 years, it's assumed that we've grown.
Okay.
So I think when the right things are put in place,
Right.
a person will grow, I think, older.
Right.
And that is what we are all expecting,
Okay.
that we can grow and enjoy the fruit of our labor.
Okay, great. So old age is a blessing, and you hope and aspire to get to that stage of life. But we are also told by the research and the literature that as you approach that age, as you cross that threshold, you are more at risk of certain mental health challenges, and that's something we need to focus on. That at that stage in life, we need to be focusing on the, should I say, burden of mental health challenges that you may be contending with, and your capacity or your ability to cope with those things.
Yes.
But let me come back to Dr. Darko again. So why is it that we are emphasizing and promoting this focus and attention to older persons and their mental well-being?
Yes. So for the older population or the elderly, usually it is quite unfortunate, but usually there's this misconception that some of the mental health issues that they have is perceived to be normal.
Okay.
A normal part of aging. It's okay for an elderly person to be sad, to be alone, to be isolated and all that. And because of that, a lot is not done to help them.
Okay.
But we are focusing on this because it's not true. There is indeed help for them, and that's why we are looking at this today.
Okay. So we tend to think, is it I guess globally,
Yes.
right? As you
globally.
get older, well, your kids will move on, family moves on, time moves on, and if you're a bit lonely or moody and so on, it's not a challenge, and therefore we'll be less likely to seek support or even some assessment for such a person
Yes,
in that
exactly.
category.
Yeah.
Okay. And coming to our part of the world, I mean, we culturally, maybe traditionally, seem to think that when you get into those stages of life, your children will look after you, the family will look after you. Isn't that sufficient? Indeed, we tout that as one of our advantages over the developed world. Isn't that sufficient to guarantee and secure the mental health and well-being of the older person?
Okay, so I think that is what a lot of people know,
Okay.
especially in African here. And we think that when you have a child, the child will definitely grow up and come and take care of you.
Okay.
And we also forget the mental health of those children,
Okay.
because when burdens are placed on them, here our concentration is based on the older ones, how the people around also perceive it to be.
Okay.
I think from the biblical point of view, I'm not preaching, but you see that it is said that parents will leave an inheritance for their children.
Okay.
But the thing has turned upside down. The misconception that is in the system, as Dr. Darko was saying, has to do with how people perceive the elderly people.
Okay.
I mean, their way of life to be. And because of that, because we don't really have much insight when it comes to mental health, or let's say mental illness, that is when we actually don't really take care of them,
Okay.
don't provide them with the needed support as they should have.
Okay.
And also, family-wise, because of the misconception that they have, they are not able to provide the needed support also to help them. And this one varies based on cultural context.
Right.
Each and every culture has a way of life
Okay.
and the way they perceive mental illness, especially in older generations, to be.
Okay, great. 23 minutes past the hour 2. If you just joined us on Joy, the program is Ultimate Health, your ultimate guide to healthy living. We're looking at the mental health and wellness of older persons, now defined and understood and accepted to be persons over 60. We know that is the age of retirement. You tell us, send us a WhatsApp, 055 11 11 997. Are you looking forward to that threshold, 60? It's approaching. I just look over my shoulder. I'm like, eeks, right? But what is your experience? Okay, what are your challenges? All right, having challenges does not automatically mean that you are mentally ill, but they are of concern, as my guests in the studio have suggested, that we need to guarantee, promote, and secure good mental health and wellness. So what are your challenges? Did you prepare for retirement? Okay, have you been kicked out of your home or the home or the accommodation that your employers gave you? Are you having challenges as you've crossed that threshold? Is your pension enough, right? Do you feel lonely? And so on and so forth. Those are things we need to look at. But let me get you to underscore, there are persons in the category we're talking about who are okay and are functioning well and are, should I say, a significant source of resource and contribution to their families and their communities.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're not saying that as soon as you cross that line, you are bad news.
Not at
No,
all.
not at all.
Okay, but we're saying that we need to be mindful that you will have needs, right,
Exactly.
that need to be met. Okay,
Exactly.
right. If you have concerns, experiences, questions, you can join us. WhatsApp is 055 11 11 997. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, so we have a growing percentage of our population in this category, and we are emphasizing and promoting and encouraging that we take a close look at what is happening to them mentally.
Exactly.
Alongside this threshold and this transition, people who are older in this category also have, through no fault of theirs, an increased vulnerability to physical ailments. Does that impact? We say the mind and body are one, or they influence each other. Does that have an impact on their mental wellness and their mental well-being?
Yes. So just as you rightly said, the physical health and the mental health go hand in hand.
Okay.
Yes. So when there's something wrong with the body physically, it definitely impacts the mental health.
Okay.
Okay. When usually in the age group, the elderly age group, as you said, they have a lot more of these physical illnesses.
Okay.
Most of the time, what we term chronic illnesses.
Right.
And dealing with these illnesses are stressful
Right.
in themselves.
Okay.
Having to take multiple medications, different medications
Right.
every day, sometimes 3-4 times a day, that in itself is a challenge.
Okay.
And then having to cope with the financial burden that these physical illnesses also confer on them.
Right.
As we said, at that age they are retired, they are may not be getting as much income as they used to, and they have to deal with medical bills and all that. So all these things contribute as stresses,
Right.
and then that impacts their mental health as well.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So in addition to what Dr. Darko said, physical health is as important as mental health.
Right.
It's unfortunate that when it comes to mental health issues, because of the stigma, it's looked upon.
Okay.
And I think a few months, or I think a few months ago, the World Psychiatric Association came out with some physical conditions that can exacerbate mental health.
Right.
So they came out with something like obesity,
Right.
stress, and even when you are not living a good, having a poor habit lifestyle.
Right. Okay.
All these things are physical.
Okay.
But when it's not handled properly or well, it can trigger or cause mental health conditions.
Okay.
So these two things are very important.
Okay.
And
Right. Okay. Share with us your experiences. We're trying to examine the mental health and wellness of the older persons over the age of 60. and the Department of Psychiatry of the University of Ghana Medical School and of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital will be observing a week of activities as part of World Mental Health Day and Mental Health Week, and we are kicking this off by looking at the mental health status of older persons in our country. We tout ourselves as very caring when it comes to looking after our parents and elderly aunts and uncles and grandparents, but we may be blind to other things that may be happening to them on the mental health plane. So that's what we're talking about. Now, losing some of your physical capacity, so you may not be strong physically, your mobility, right? Moving around is more difficult for you with or without Uber and Bolt and all those things, right? It's still a challenge. Your productivity has waned, right? You may not be, or you probably are not supposed to be fully employed, though some are still working, right? All these pose challenges and act as stressors on the older person, and we need to put all that into the basket we're looking at, right? So is it possible to assess some of these things? I mean, just take a look at the person's load and the transitions they've gone through. I know some organizations and employers do some pre-retirement programs to actually bring to the fore some of these things we are talking about. Is it possible to do that? Are we doing that in our part of the world, that we are preparing people for this latter stage of life?
Well, it is possible for it to be done, but as to whether we are doing it and doing it well, that's another issue. But yes, it is indeed very important to prepare for what is ahead, to know that things will not be the way they used to be, because that helps you to cope. Being able to even accept that at that age your functioning is going to reduce, you're going to have some decline in your cognitive function, which is normal with aging. Being able to come to that realization alone sometimes is very helpful when it comes to your mental health. So I'm not too sure that we are doing the best we can to prepare ourselves for old age, but it is possible for us to do better. Okay,
you let us know. 055 11 11 997. We're live on Facebook and YouTube as well. Who prepared you? What prepared you for your later years? And are you facing any significant challenges? And do you sense or perceive that there's a certain preparation and provision in terms of healthcare for your needs at that stage of life? That's what we're looking at now, right? Okay, so let's look at some of the challenges. A person who's meeting the challenges, a person who is socially connected, has some protection, or if I dare say, immunity from some of the stresses we are talking about.
Yes, exactly.
But we do know that a significant percentage of them present to us. Are we seeing more of the elderly in our hospitals, in our facilities, as a result of this?
Yes. So people are becoming more aware of their mental health needs, and so a lot more people are coming in. Like we were saying, it's easier for people at a certain age to start going in for checkups for physical health. But usually we don't do the same for mental health. But over the years, I think that people are coming in more. I know that we have even geriatric clinics within the psychiatric departments and the psychiatric hospitals where the aged are catered for. So people are coming in, a lot more people are coming in, which is good. But there's still a lot more out there who are a bit ignorant about these issues, and we would like to sensitize them about it.
Yes, Francis.
Yes, and in addition to that, we all know that growth is inevitable, and we will definitely get to the age that we want to be. However, as Dr. Ato Acquah said, there are so many things that are put in place. I know when you look at our resources now as a nation, we lack a lot of things, especially when it comes to our senior citizens, let me call them that way, and that we have to help them. And I think from our side, I think we've started something that will be able to help such people. And that is the reason why probably we are even here today.
Right.
And it's one of the steps to help people that are of age and they need the right support.
Okay.
So both physical, mental, and everything.
Okay. Great. I'm glad we're doing this, and I have to host this almost as if I'm a total stranger to what we're talking about, and I'm not in the same department with you. But what has been the response? I mean, I'll activate the phone line shortly, but persons listening to us, are they likely to walk to Kolebu, to walk to the Department of Psychiatry and say, well, I listened to this program, and I think my auntie, or I think even I myself, need some assessment and some support, right? Is that the kind of response we're getting, or are we still battling with the walls and the barriers of stigma and discrimination? As soon as people hear psychiatrist, occupational therapist, clinical psychologist, mental health nurse, and so on and so forth, they get a bit jittery. Are we getting a response?
Yes, we are getting a response. Some response. I mean, definitely we are still talking about this because there's a lot more. We want a lot more response. Yes, but we do have people who come in and say, hey, I heard this talk here. I heard this person talk about this, and I think that my mom, my auntie, my dad may have this challenge.
Okay.
And I mean, I always say that the psychiatric department of every institution is one of the most friendly places you can just walk into,
Definitely.
see somebody,
Right.
and then they are willing and ready to listen and offer help where possible. So yes, we are getting some response, but we want a lot more. The stigma is still ongoing, and we are also fighting it. We would encourage everybody listening to us today that there is help. I mean, there is nothing wrong with talking about your mental health.
Right.
If you can talk about your physical health, you should be able to talk about your mental health and know that there is help available.
Okay, great. And Francis and a few other colleagues in the department run a community outreach where they follow up on issues within the communities, or should I even say home-based support and home-based follow-up and management, right? Which is another way or another bridge through which we can reach older persons who may be in the category we're talking about. So these are things that are now being heavily, significantly promoted, and we also need the public to understand that. But let me come back to some of these issues, right? In other parts of the world, we hear of elder abuse. You are the older relative, you live with your family or a member of your family. You may or may not be connected. You may live in isolation. Isolation is in itself sometimes termed a form of abuse where nobody checks on you. But there are those who maltreat and mistreat the elderly. Do we get that in our part of the world?
Yes, I think some part, and it's something that we are not really encouraging people to do that. And it all boils down to the misconception that we were talking about.
Right.
People don't really have insight when it comes to mental health conditions. So there are a lot of elderly people that have been branded or perceived to even be having witchcraft when they start exhibiting some of these things.
Right.
I think 3 months ago, we had issues in, I think, one part of a part in this country where a group of women were perceived to be experiencing what is it? They are saying that they have witchcraft or something.
Right.
But we found out that they were having mental health issues.
Okay.
And I think people are into that because of the insight that I'm talking about they don't have. So I think if proper education is carried out and people get to understand all these things, it will be taken out of the system or the picture where people receive good mental health care services.
Okay. Good afternoon, Norte. This is Ajingo in Community 9 Tema. Please find out for me if there's a link between menopausal syndromes and mental health of adults. I guess you're talking about women here, right? Menopause, which of course he relates to age as well. And he's asking, is it linked to their mental well-being?
Okay, so as I said, anything that happens to us physically can be linked to our mental well-being.
Okay.
Going through menopause is a significant change in a woman's life, and then menopause in itself comes along with certain symptoms and features which are quite uncomfortable and can serve as a stressor to the woman. And in this way, it can be linked to mental issues. But sometimes people have this misconception that once a woman hits menopause, then it's sort of mental health problems are inevitable. That isn't the case. There are people that go through menopause, and as we said, they are perfectly fine. They are taking care of their mental health pretty well.
Great. Ultimate Health, thank you. I'm enjoying the discussion. Please ask your guests how people in that age bracket react to being called elderly or aged. My experience is that they feel they are being called names somewhat indicate that they are heading to death, and so they tend not to present or utilize available resources. So the same stigma and labeling that we were talking about. Should we? I mean, the UN uses. Yesterday was International Year for Older Persons, right? Or International Day for Older Persons. Sometimes you hear elderly and so on and so forth. So, is the labeling or the nomenclature a challenge?
Well,
if you are older, you are older.
Exactly. But I think that there are some individual differences. I mean, there are people who embrace old age.
Know your age, know your stage.
Yes, and then they don't mind if you say they are elderly. They know they are, but there are some people too who don't want to be tagged as old.
Okay.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a challenge if I'm older and I have a problem being seen or labeled as such?
Yes. So as I said earlier, as part of mental health, it helps to be able to identify the stage of life you are in.
That's right.
To accept it. And then to be able to cope with what comes along with it. Because if you're 60, you're 60. If you're referred to as an elderly person, an aged, an older person, senior citizen, you know, it still doesn't change the fact that you're 60 or above. Yes. But I think that the focus should be on, you know, in our culture, there is some sort of prestige that comes with old age.
Definitely.
Yes. Old age is something we revere, we respect, we see as a bag of experience and knowledge, wisdom. Yes, exactly. So I think that if a person does not want to identify with the fact that they are elderly or aged, I don't think that is more of stigma. But there is some anxiety that comes with
the transition.
Yes, with the transition. And sometimes if you realize that this person is a bit more anxious or too particular about some of these things, it may be a sign that there's some
challenge.
Yes, there is some challenge.
Right. Okay. I'm going to announce the phone line 0302 216541 0302 216541. You can get in on the action. We're live on Facebook and YouTube as well. Let's talk about some of the more common concerns, some of which are actually known classifiable disorders. We hear of depression a lot amongst older persons. Can we just talk briefly about that? Depression.
Okay. So, as you said, yes, it is very common among the age group. And this is largely so because, as we've said, there is a transition. In that age bracket, there are a lot of things going on. People tend to sit back, reflect on their life, where they have come from, and hitting retirement now, what is ahead of them. At that stage, people are losing friends and loved ones, and all this contribute to the risk of developing depression. When it comes to older persons suffering depression, I mean, it's usually when we hear depression, our mind goes to sadness.
Yeah.
But depression is much more than sadness. And for elderly people, the early signs include things like sleep changes. They are unable to sleep well. Appetite is changing. Sometimes they don't isolate themselves per se, but they begin to socialize less. And these are things that sometimes we see as normal, but they can be indicators.
Have a social withdrawal or social isolation, not necessarily a physical isolation.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. So to add to that, you know, the foundation of depression has to do with the feeling of helplessness and hopelessness when it comes in. And individual who age, when we consider the psychosocial development by Erikson, there is something we call it integrity versus despair. When someone grows older and at a point where he or she makes reflection upon his or her life, the person comes to assess himself whether he has lived a meaningful life or he has lived a life of regret. So when he has lived a meaningful life, that is when you see the grandpas and the grandmoms, they want to be called like that. But when he has lived a life of regret, that is where sometimes the helplessness, the hopelessness set in. And if care is not taken, the person will be depressed.
Right. So at that point in life, you may be looking, you may be thinking some kind of VAR has been called in to review what you've done in life. How have your children turned out? What have you been able to achieve, and so on and so forth. That could tip you into a depression. And another challenge we have in this category is that because of all the things we've talked about, sometimes when they get into these stages of mental illness, they are not picked up. They are not easy to diagnose because there are so many other layers that mask what is going on with them.
Yes, you are right. You see, we have some unusual common behaviors that will, I would say, they are like red flags for us to get notice of this.
Right, share with us.
But unfortunately, people normally don't know. When you have someone who is aged or of age, and you see certain behaviors like inhibition and behaviors where the person sometimes will be making, references. Most of the time they'll be like, the person, I've seen a dead person, there's someone standing, I mean the hallucinations are in. We have people that sometimes they keep on pacing up and down. With my community experience, I've seen people who are aged, and sometimes you go and see them, they are sitting on the floor crying, having these crying spells like children. So I think these are small things
so
that
changes.
Exactly, that fluctuations become some way. And these are things that sometimes, if you don't get people who have insight into mental health, they attribute it to a lot of things. Especially when they start making some sort of suspicions and also making some claims that people don't know. If the people around are do not really have insight into mental health, they attribute it to certain things, and you will see them go in a different direction instead of seeking proper mental health treatment.
Yes. And just to add a bit more to that, usually when it comes to depression, yes, it may have to do with all these things we've spoken about, and sometimes genuinely these risk factors we have mentioned are just not there. The person doesn't necessarily have to have these things before we say that what is going on is depression. And what also makes it a bit challenging sometimes to pick it up, even when they are seeing their primary care physician, is that sometimes they are on, as we said, multiple drugs, and some of these drugs can have
depression.
that effect. Sometimes they have several illnesses, physical illnesses going on, which may mask the presentation of the depression. So it's really something that when you notice, you don't have to say, oh, it's part of aging or it's this or that.
Okay.
There needs to be a thorough assessment to be able to pick it up early enough to treat it.
All right. So if you're experiencing any of these things or you have seen them evident in somebody close to you, draw closer to a facility and have a little chat, and an initial assessment will be done, right, to confirm or eliminate the fears that you have. And then if there is something found, then you can get the support that you need.
Exactly.
We're talking about prioritizing your mental health and wellness. Today we are focusing on older persons, and I've got my guest from the Department of Psychiatry of the University of Ghana Medical School, Dr. Josephine Styles Daku is a senior medical officer with the Department of Psychiatry in Kolebu, and Francis Yeboah is a mental health practitioner, community mental health practitioner with the same department. If you have any questions, concerns, phone line is 0302216541, and WhatsApp is 05511119997. We also hear, Francis and Josephine, we hear about dementia, and sometimes it's used in a derogatory way. What is dementia?
Okay, so dementia, just to make it as simple as possible, is it's a decline in cognitive function.
All right.
Where usually, the most persistent symptom is the forgetfulness,
right,
where people notice that a person begins to forget things, even conversations that you've had with a person, where they've placed items and things like that. But dementia goes a bit more beyond the forgetfulness.
Right.
Yes. It can progress, and that is when it becomes challenging. Usually people easily accept the forgetfulness. Oh, she's growing, she's old,
right,
and she's forgetful. We expect it. But then when they start having some behavioral challenges, the sleep issues are coming in. Sometimes we have people who react because they can't remember or recall something.
Right.
They react. They don't know where they've placed something. They accuse people of stealing it.
Right.
Yes. And this causes some challenges in the home and people caring for them. And that is when people tend to seek help at that stage. But then usually when it starts, it's a better time to seek help because the progress of dementia can be suppressed
or suppressed.
Yes, exactly. And that is a better time to come in for assessment and treatment.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. We have about 10 minutes to go. So some of these conditions, we are expecting to see them more evident in older persons. And we are also trying to align ourselves to policies that promote and secure mental wellness. Okay. What are some of the things that as a service and indeed as a country we should be doing to promote mental wellness amongst this age group? What kind of things should we be looking at?
Okay, so I think their physical wellness and mental illness, like as we said, mental wellness needs to be put into consideration.
Right.
Like we've explained earlier, you can't take these two things goes hand in hand.
Right.
So that when you talk of the physical wellness, their diet, exercise, things that promote their physical well-being needs to be considered.
All right.
Then with that of the mental wellness too, that is when we seek proper mental health services.
Okay.
There are so many clients that most of the time when we go and see them, we realize that there are a bit of deterioration in terms of their mental process.
Right.
And what I mean is, like, you could see that they are actually going through a lot mentally, that they need a practitioner or someone in that field to help.
Okay.
So I think these two things go hand in hand, and when we do that, it's going to help the clients or the people around very well, and also at the long run help the entire nation as well.
Okay. So should we have policies? For example, I know even with COVID, In other countries, they put in place things that prevented people from being thrown out of their accommodation by landlords and so on and so forth. Should we have these social cushions and structures in place to also, should I say, protect them?
Yes, exactly.
Do we have any such things for the older person?
Well,
as we seek to prioritize these things?
Yes. I'm not too sure about what is currently available, but I think that, as we mentioned earlier, usually when people are getting to this age brackets, we are more concerned about their retirement.
Right.
There's a lot of noise about their financial well-being,
so pensions, retirement packages, and so on.
After that age, but we don't put a lot more emphasis on their health.
Okay.
I mean, if they have all the savings, all the retirement, but they are not well enough to enjoy the benefits, then unfortunately it doesn't do them any good.
Okay.
But if emphasis can be placed on it, as much as institutions are mandated to put these financial cushions in place,
right,
there should also be some efforts to make sure that the people are healthy, both physically and mentally, enough to enjoy these benefits.
We focus on pensions, the different tiers of pensions and so on and so forth, we should be making sure that there are services and provisions for these persons to secure and guarantee their quality of life.
Yes.
All right. This one says, I have always had a challenge with able-bodied persons who allow this retirement label to define their mindset. I think we must consciously reprogram the over 60 persons to redefine and retire for a fruitful old age. This is A.L. Tema. He's 68 and feeling good and extremely buoyant. I retire, not retired. I retire, but I'm not retired.
Exactly.
Right. So the mindset is also,
very important.
Very important.
Very important.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. 68 and sexy, I guess. I like the word he uses. He uses buoyant.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's important for us to look at these things. We're almost wrapping up, but so when you come to, let's say, Korle Bu or any other facility, how welcome are these category of persons? We hear of adolescent-friendly corners and so on and so forth. For the elderly, when they come to our facilities, be it for mental health services or physical, are we well positioned to cushion them and not end up causing harm or acting as stressors to them? Do we have the time, the skills, and the expertise to actually deliver what we are prioritizing right now?
Sure.
Yes. So for our department in the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, for that I can speak very well too, and I know for the other institutions, when it comes to mental health, as I said, very, very welcoming environment. And this is where the culture even comes in to help very well.
Right.
Usually in most of the healthcare facilities, when you enter the place, we see an elderly person, usually, especially even when they walk in without any
helper or assistant, or relative,
we want to attend to you quickly. I mean, know why you came, have time for you, and then, get you back home or wherever you want to go to as quickly as possible. And all the other people seem to understand because this person is elderly.
Sure. So in addition to that, and
so that's a deliberate policy put in place.
Exactly.
It's like an unwritten rule.
Okay.
Yes. So, and in addition to that, knowing the mobility issues of the aged, Korle Bu runs the community service, of which we know that clients can't keep on coming for reviews.
Okay.
So the community service consists of the psychiatrists, the psychiatric nurses, occupational therapy, psychologists.
Right.
We know that when a client goes to that age, he will need the services of all these people. Okay. So we've made provisions.
Community follow-up.
Exactly. Provisions for such aged people so that they'll be following up on them at their own doorsteps or at their various homes, which helps them a lot. Okay. And I entreat all the other hospitals that if they can do that, it will go a long way, because currently Kolebu Department of Psychiatry is the only institution running this community-based service with all these multidisciplinary professionals coming together.
Going out and reaching out and bringing or bridging the treatment and support gap.
Yes.
Right. So persons can access these as well. Okay. We've run out of time, but we selectively did not go deep on mental illnesses. We wanted you to understand mental wellness, the kind of stresses that may challenge your mental wellness, especially or particularly at this stage of life, right? Are you feeling okay about yourself, your situation, your stage of life? Not so much age, right? Age is a determining threshold, but your stage in life. Where are you at? How are you coping with the stresses of life at that stage in life? As you advance, the should I say usual bedfellows, the mental health challenges and the physical challenges come together, and it may complicate your situation. That's what we've been talking about today with Dr. Josephine Styles Daku of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital and Francis Yeboah. I think there was something else. I've lost it on the screen. How does one approach this? Can you just walk in? Let's end with that. Can you just walk into the facility, albeit the only one with this complement of services and this policy thrust? Can you just walk in and say, "Hey, I need to speak to somebody"? Can you do that?
Sure. We know Kolebu is a teaching hospital, and you definitely need a referral to come. But when it comes to the Department of Psychiatry, you can just walk in.
Right.
You can walk in and you see the receptionist. You tell the receptionist whoever wants to see.
Okay.
And also, if you can't walk in, you can just call the community for them to also, they do case management as well.
When you say call the community, what do you mean?
I mean, the community has a line
right.
that you can call. You can either call the psychiatric OPD, you'll be given the necessary guidance, and you can also call the community when they needs to come home to make the necessary assessment.
Okay. Are we able to give out those numbers, or you don't have them immediately?
No,
okay,
please. No.
Since we're having you next week, we'll make out. We'll make a promise to be able to bridge and give out the numbers that persons who have these challenges can call. Next week, we'll look at other issues. Again, we're prioritizing mental health and wellness. A couple of weeks back, we had World Suicide Prevention Day, and there are a few other issues that we need to look at. With a view to prioritizing mental health issues in our communities and making sure that we're not only concerned about physical wellness. Anything you want to leave us with quickly?
Yes. So quickly talking about prioritizing mental health and well-being for the elderly, I would like to say that, yes, as one of our was sent in earlier, you read a message where we had a 68-year-old who said that he was buoyant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Many are.
Yes. Getting to that age doesn't automatically mean mental illness. There is a lot of things that can still be done to take care of your mental health. You can get involved in, even if it's voluntary work. Yes, get involved, read a book, find new hobbies.
Remain socially connected to family and friends.
Even if you're immobile, there's technology. You can have video calls and things like that. Just keep busy, keep doing something. And then that should go a long way to help you maintain mental wellness.
Okay, great. So there are many things you can do to remain connected and to secure your mental health wellness, right? Don't just, should I say, raise your hands in despair and say, well, I've heard that at this stage of life, this will happen. But the important message is that there's help available. Exactly. There's a new thrust, a new focus, a new emphasis that looks at prioritizing our mental health and wellness, and we'll be following that over the next 3 weeks with the different disciplines. Today, we had Dr. Josephine Styles Daku, a senior medical officer with the Department of Psychiatry, Kolebu Teaching Hospital, and Francis Yeboah, who is a community mental health practitioner with the same department. We hope it's in revealing and enlightening and educative for you. We'll be back with them next week to look deeper at some of these things we want to prioritize. Stick and stay on Joy 99.7 FM. Many thanks to my producer, Abeku Sankofi. My name is Norte.